Hey everybody, Mr. Harvey here. Let's finish up that chapter 15 lecture and continue our conversation about socialism and about politics leading up to World War One. So we talked in the last lecture about socialism in Britain, France, and Germany. Obviously, we can't talk about socialism and Marxism without talking about Russia. But before we do so, it's important to understand that Russia, in the late 19th century, finally is going to start to industrialize. And Alexander, the Tsar, his son Nicholas, the future Tsar, truly believe that, they are behind. And they can see it. I mean, Germany is on their border, and they are the perennial new economic power of Europe and of the world. And they realize quickly that they need to industrialize. They are behind culturally, they are behind socially, politically, they are behind economically, but more importantly, they're behind militarily. Germany has industrialized weapons, and Russia doesn't. And they know in a future conflict, if they were to fight the Germans, and we'll see this in World War One, they will just get obliterated, and that's what it will happen to them in World War One. So the monarchy is going to put Count Sergei Witte in charge of modernizing Russia. He's a finance minister. He's going to introduce lots of high taxes in order to create revenue, along with encouraging foreign investment, foreign loans, to be able to invest in new industrialized infrastructure, lots of protective tariffs in order to protect Russian business. But industrialization, ladies and gentlemen, it's a little too late. We're going to see them, Russia expand in steel, in iron, in textiles. They're going to build a Trans-Siberian Railroad. Remember back to when we were studying, I believe in chapter 13, industrialization, and we saw that that figure of railroads in Europe, and you saw tons in Britain, tons in Germany, but we saw nothing in Russia. Yeah, Russia starts to industrialize, but ladies and gentlemen, it's a little too late, and it's not going to be the end-all be-all for their problems. Even though there's industry going to be growing in Russia, it's not going to improve the lives of their serfs or their former serfs, the peasantry, because we know that they've really messed up freeing the serfs. They're still paying money for that land for the landowners. They're still paying those loans, and a lot of them are still working on the land of prosperous farmers in order to make some kind of money, some kind of economic gain. And those prosperous farms are called kulaks. So, things, just because Russia's industrializing doesn't mean they're still going to have their problem. Landowners felt that foreign companies were making way too much money and having way too much influence in their government. And Russia, ladies and gentlemen, is now going through a lot of the problems that Europe had gone through in the previous 20, 30, 40 years. Russia is now dealing with workers having poor working conditions, poor urban conditions, because with industrialization comes urbanization. So Russia is now kind of going through these problems that the rest of Europe has already gone through. We're going to see a liberal party form led by those Zemstovs. Remember those local councils formed by former landowners who kind of had a deal with the monarchy, the Tsar, in order to give up their serfs. They got more control of the local governments. Well, they're going to want to continue to gain power for themselves and continue to decentralize the monarchy through a constitutional monarchy that would further strip the monarchy of rights. We see another social revolutionary party that was opposed to industrialism and wanted an agrarian Russia. But the person I want to talk about, the person I really want to get to, is Mr. Vladimir Lenin. Now, Russian socialism, ladies and gentlemen, had to be really low-key and had to typically operate really in darkness. And that was because of an authoritarian regime, and they definitely could be killed. The party that's going to, lead the Marxists and communists will be the Social Democratic Party, and they were heavily Marxist. No coincidence. Marxism, Lenin, communism in Russia is very much going to be influenced by the original communists of Marxism. Now, the leader of our communists in our radical, the Social Democratic Party is going to be Lenin. Let me tell you a little bit about him and give you some background, okay? His real name, I really can't pronounce. I think it's Vladimir Ulyanov. And he was very involved in radical politics early on in his life, exiled to Siberia before moving west to Switzerland. And important to know, ladies and gentlemen, he had a personal vendetta against the Tsar. His brother was killed and hung by the Tsar. And Lenin kept that with him his whole life. And he wanted to get rid of the Tsar. He wanted to kill the Tsar and avenge his brother. Now, let's highlight this. Really important about Mr. Vladimir Lenin. Lenin believed that it was the job, and his type of communist and his type of socialist, it was the job of professional revolutionaries to bring consciousness and therefore teach the proletariats to revolt. And that it would be his professional revolutionaries to facilitate change and lead the proletariats. It wouldn't be the proletariats themselves. It wouldn't be the working class leading a revolt as Marx predicted and wanting, the workers of the world to unite. No, Lenin believed that he could create, and he wanted to create professional revolutionaries to instigate the revolutionary and then bring the proletariat with them. So he had a really he believed in Marxism, but not a pure version of Marxism. He believed in revolution. He believed in the violent revolution, but there's a little asterisk with his beliefs. He believed that there would be professional revolutionaries to facilitate this change and instigate it, and that they would be the cause of the revolutionary change, okay? Now, Lenin, we're going to see the Social Democratic Party split into two. We have Lenin's faction called the Bolsheviks, aka majority, and that's going to be very important for us to know. And the moderate or the minority faction is going to be called the Mensheviks. We will mention Bolsheviks a lot. That simply means majority. Okay, that simply means majority. All right. Now, here are some differences between the Mensheviks and Bolsheviks, okay? The Mensheviks wanted a party of mass membership. They wanted to be very similar to Germany's Socialist Party, and they wanted to function more democratically. Not the Bolsheviks, not Lenin. He wanted those elite revolutionaries, okay, to facilitate revolutionary change, and they wanted centralized leadership of the working class. They wanted violence, and they didn't want to solve their problems through legislation. They didn't want to function democratically. They wanted to erase the status quo, erase the Tsar and the monarchy, okay? Now, Lenin was smart, okay? Lenin understood the pulse of Russia, and he understood Russia very well. And he knew that if he could get the peasants on his side, the serfs, and the working class, that they had the power to overthrow the Tsar, and he knew it. And he will do that in World War I when the Germans bring him over into Russia and just let him loose. He knew how to organize Russia and how to get the support to overthrow the monarchy and the status quo. And he is going to seize power in 1917 with World War I. We will talk about that. The war is going to go awful for the Russians. They're just going to get completely outmaneuvered and outgunned by the Germans. And that is going to give Lenin the opening. And the Germans are going to sneak him in there to do his thing. And that is, with all these factors, it's going to give Lenin the opening to undermine and overcome the Tsar. And there he is. Right there. Old Major from Animal Farm. Rocking the bald look. Love it. All right. Now, we're going to see Russia kind of go through a more low-key revolution that's not talked about a lot, and that's the revolution of 1905. Ladies and gentlemen, this is going to foreshadow our Russian Revolution. Okay? Now, this revolution had nothing to do with Lenin, just the Tsar being a clown, okay? And there's a couple factors that are going to facilitate this. Number one is industrialization. It is not going well. And, typically when countries were industrializing, they had their problems, right? Britain had their own problems. Germany had their own problems. and they solved it all differently, right? Legislation, we saw the Great Reform Bill of 1832, the Factory Acts, right, and how Britain solved it. Industrialization in Russia is spurring a lot of that resentment that we've seen in Europe. Working conditions, labor, terrible urban conditions. But also another embarrassment for Russia is they're going to get in a war with Japan and lose. This is going to be embarrassing. They're going to lose a war to this much smaller Asian nation, and the Europeans felt, racial superior. They felt that they were superior to Asian cultures and countries, and they're going to lose to the Japanese. And we will talk more about the Japanese, their Bushido culture, their samurai culture, and what makes them very spirited, militaristic society. But, and I haven't talked about this yet, but the Japanese have industrialized as well. Okay, big time. And they are going to be the industrial giant of Asia. And Russia gets in a fight with them and loses. Another huge event is we see Bloody Sunday. We are going to see the Tsar's troops violently put down a protest. And we are going to see a lot of ordinary Russians no longer trust the Tsar. That we are going to see his troops fire on protesters and really create a lot of instability within the Russian Empire. We're going to see riots break out all over. We're going to see Russian groups called Soviets, start to control the city of St. Petersburg, and we are going to see a lot of instability. Now, Nicholas is going to calm things down with this October manifesto, promising to check his own power. He's going to give up some power and promise a constitutional government. Now, he's going to create this representative body called the Duma, all right, which is going to be, their version of parliament, their version of a Reichstag, and he's going to, on paper, start to give up some of his power. Is he really? Not really. But he is going to, create the guise, create the appearance of him, giving up some of his power. We're going to see Pyotr Stolypin become the new prime minister. He is going to repress this rebellion and remove even more potential causes to revolt and rally people to support the Tsar. One of the first things he does is he cancels those serf redemption payments and says, hey, serfs, you don't have to pay anything back. That is really going to cause a lot of serfs to stop supporting any revolt or to, cause any discontent amongst the peasant and rural areas. We're going to see, serfs be like, all right, we're good. And that will kind of put a pause to any revolution. But the wheels are turning, ladies and gentlemen. We are on our ways. This is foreshadowing our eventual Russian Revolution. Stolypin will be assassinated in 1911. We're going to see Rasputin. Remind me to play the Rasputin song when we get back to school. He is going to gain favor with the Tsar because supposedly he could heal the Tsar's son who was very sick. He had hemophilia, which is, I believe, a genetic disease. And so he would, I believe he would have trouble with something to deal with his blood. But Rasputin was a very strange man, very uncouth. A lot of people were suspicious of him. And we're going to see the Tsar's power continue to be undermined, and really the Tsar is going to be on the defensive until he's ousted. So, ladies and gentlemen, that's it for chapter 15. Here's a picture of Bloody Sunday. You see the soldiers right here firing on the crowd of protesters. And this is going to facilitate our Russian Revolution. Please watch this lecture, ladies and gentlemen, and and please watch our chapter 16 lectures. Take care. Hope you're having a great week.